Hi, and welcome to another week's Tips for AI Trailblazers. I'm Kathleen Purley, your host and founder of Demystify. This week, we're going to explore the new release from OpenAI, the ChatGPT Agent. This has been all the buzz on social media and Twitter, and I think it's a really great way to kind of really show and really start to think about how work is going to transition with these new types of digital workers. Now, I will tell you, these tools and models and this new type of comprehensive, commercially available agents are new. So be careful in terms of how you use it. Use it as a way to experiment and understand what that might look like. But give it only the necessary information it needs to conduct its task. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, if you aren't seeing this in your browser, they've been rolling it out first to pro users, teams, enterprises, as well as plus users. So you might not have gotten that rollout, or you just might not know where to go. So when you log into ChatGPT, as you can see here, what you can do is simply identify which model you would like the agent to use. So you can use the O3, O3 Pro, O4 Mini, or the simple 4.0 model. Typically, if I want it to be more research-based and focused, I will utilize the O3 or O3 Pro model. If it's more basic and standard, I would utilize our 4.0 model, as you can see here. And then if I wanted to do something technical, but not necessarily a lot of research, I typically will then go to the O4 models. And so it's a little background on which ones to use, but you can always kind of test them out as well. And you do have a limit on how many of these that you're able to use, or how many agent interactions you're able to have each month, depending on your tier. But we're going to go ahead and use it. So as you can see here, once you select the model, you then just move into agent mode. You can give access to different types of sources. So you can connect it to your Gmail, your Box, your folders, things of that nature. For the purpose of this demo, I've kind of kept things pretty separate just because of security reasons for now. But what we're going to have it do is actually have it develop a presentation. And we're not only asking it to develop the presentation, we're asking it to do its research, develop the presentation, and actually have like an end product. So an end-to-end project, if you will, something that you might actually give to an intern. And so I'm going to go ahead and have this go forward. And so what you're really seeing here is kind of the compilation or the combination of operator agents, which was available to the pro users that I use quite a bit actually, as well as the deep research tool with a little bit of ChatGPT mixed in. It will give you questions as well. If you don't answer, it actually will go ahead and make assumptions on that. So I will just say business focused. So we'll say business focused more generally is fine. And what's really interesting, and I think what some of the kind of frontier labs are finding is that when DeepSeek was released and you could actually see the reasoning, people really gleaned onto it because you can really kind of figure out what's going on and the thought process and really help course correct. I will say I've done this earlier with working on building certain types of knowledge documentation that I'm using to train an AI agent. And, the ability to interrupt midway is super valuable. And it doesn't start all the way back from square one. It maintains the first instructions and some of that insight before you move forward. And so it is doing its research, as you can see here. And it does take some time. So oftentimes I will recommend, and I typically do this, I end up opening another browser and doing something else for a while as this runs in the background. But it is, I will say, fun to watch if you're new to it, just to see how the process and the thinking of these models work. Now, one thing I'll note, if you're using this tool, it can access not only its own kind of little Docker or desktop that it creates and stands up, as you can see here, but it can also access different tools and different web applications. That being said, I have found some issues with certain web sites not allowing agents to integrate or interact. So there are some limitations, not necessarily on the agent side, more on the other side of the application that you're trying to integrate and them not allowing this type of interaction. One thing that you'll note here, when you select agent, oftentimes you'll see it's like a star icon that really basically identifies the best tools that you want your agent to use. You can also select slides or sheets if you want it to pull in that information for you as well. And you can also do actions or online interactions, if you will. So whether it's, truly doing family meal planning from start to finish and bringing in memory and bringing in a knowledge layer as it pertains to food allergies, things of that nature, how many people in the family, but not only do the meal planning, but also go and order all of the ingredients that you need and have that delivered to your house. So you are seeing this kind of more end to end. I will say this is not fully baked in the way of like expectations of where this can go, but it really does give you a commercially available, widely public way to start interacting with agents. A lot of enterprises are already looking at how they think about how this can amplify their workforce, whether that's through restructuring their offering and kind of doing a push out to agents and then having a human kind of validate and then put it back into the process, to organizations and enterprises integrating it directly through APIs and really kind of baking them in as a digital coworker. Now, those types of tools are typically built on-prem or within their own cloud environments, where their enterprise has a lot of the security and gates and pieces and the ability to monitor the agents, which is a very important part of leveraging this technology for work. Is, can you monitor and audit the outputs and the thought processes to ensure that, from a governance perspective, you're not experiencing model drift, or where, the model starts to kind of disengage or start to, I guess, underperform typical expectations. And so you can see here, it seems to have done most of its research, starting to build the presentation format for us, which we'll see shortly. And it's interesting, as you can see here, we've talked a little bit in our newsletter about the Cloudflare bot blocker, and then Cloudflare's new ability to actually monetize web crawls by AI agents like this. So you can see here that some of these content pieces, the model's not able to actually read or ingest, and so it's having to find alternative sources of information. You can see here the model's pretty basic, or the prompt is pretty basic. Just, I want to create a strategic presentation outlining how emerging AI agent frameworks and their underlying orchestration layers work. And a couple of key things I want to touch on. I was just talking to somebody earlier today, and one thing I'll note is typically I'll do a voice note in terms of what I'm wanting the model to do, and then I actually ask different AI models to help enhance that prompt for an agent workflow or things of that nature. In this tool, you don't have to do agent structured prompts the way that we have more on an enterprise level, where you're looking at more of setting a role task, having it reference certain types of documentation and embeds and things of that nature. So it's a little bit easier for somebody who's not as well versed to still build and create some of these benefits that you get with having these digital coworkers, if you will. So as you'll see here, it is pulling this all into a JavaScript, putting it into a template. One thing to note, you can also upload your own brand guidelines, if you will. So if you want certain fonts, colors, it will also ingest that as well. So we'll continue to give it a little bit more time, and we're going to cut this video shortly just so that you don't have to listen to me ramble. And we will come back when it's done. All right, as you can see here, it took about 29 minutes, but we have our presentation on emerging AI agent frameworks and some of the challenges. One thing to note that I enjoy with these different types of models, you can go back to when it worked. It'll tell you, it did 15 searches, it resourced, there are 138 sources there. You can also utilize this activity, which will give you the breakdown in terms of every aspect and thing that it has done. And so you can kind of figure out potentially where it went wrong or some of the challenges with it as well. And then you are able to see the actual presentation. So it did the research, it formatted it, and it really kind of helped bring it together in a storytelling format that works in PowerPoint. So let's see if we can open up this file for you to get a feel. Now, there are still some challenges in terms of how it is laying out, but if you were to upload brand voice guidelines, you tend to get a little bit better output. But you are looking at the AI agent landscape, different types of dimensions, cost analysis, productivity gains. And so this is a great start. As I mentioned earlier, we've been talking a lot about AI agents acting more and more like a very smart intern. And I would say this is probably the closest that I've seen it truly act like an intern. Right, there's still some things I might need to zhuzh or kind of clean up, but you are able to also identify all of the sources that are being used as well, which is hugely valuable. And when you can go back and reread the activity, you can kind of really start to think about how it got to this type of storytelling or really thinking about it. So I hope you enjoyed this week's Tips for AI Trailblazers, where we looked at ChatGPT's AI agent. And stay tuned for more tips and tools and tricks to leverage AI at work.